All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are talking about a company that completely changed, well, everything. We're going to dig into the incredible story of Netflix, a journey that starts with a simple red envelope and ends up rewiring how we all watch TV and movies. So let's start at the very beginning. The question is, how did this company, the one famous for those iconic red envelopes, even get started? What was that initial spark that basically launched a whole revolution in entertainment? And maybe even more mind-blowing, how did it go from that to this? A global entertainment giant that's now producing Oscar-winning films and even streaming live NFL games. I mean, how does that happen? Okay, let's get into it. So let's rewind. Our story starts way back in 1997. The dot-com boom was just hitting its peak, and this small, simple, but pretty revolutionary idea was about to go head-to-head with an absolute giant in home entertainment. Okay, so the early years were just a total whirlwind. It literally started with a super simple test. The founders mailed a CD to one of their houses just to see if it would break. It didn't. And from that little test, everything exploded. They introduced that game-changing subscription model, they somehow survived the dot-com crash, and then they had this one fateful meeting that would define the next decade. And get this, by 2005, they were already shipping 1 million DVDs every single day. Just incredible. Now, here's the really crucial part. Netflix's big idea wasn't just about getting DVDs in the mail, right? That was convenient, sure, but the real disruption was the business model. They zeroed in on the one thing everybody hated about renting movies, those ridiculous late fees. For one flat monthly fee, you could keep a DVD for as long as you wanted. No deadlines, no penalties. That was the game changer. But, it wasn't all smooth sailing. By 2000, Netflix was in deep trouble. They were just bleeding money. So in a pretty desperate move, they went to the undisputed king of the industry, Blockbuster, and offered to sell the entire company for $50 million. And what happened? The Blockbuster CEO reportedly just laughed them out of the room. He called it dot-com hysteria and completely dismissed them. Oof. And this right here, this just perfectly shows the two completely different paths these companies took after that one meeting. I mean, look at this. Netflix hits its first profit just a few years later. Blockbuster, well, they tried to play catch-up, but it was too little too late. They were just crushed by debt and couldn't adapt. This was the moment, that one turning point that set the stage for everything that came next for Netflix. Now, what's fascinating is that even while the DVD business was absolutely booming, the founders knew it wouldn't last forever. They saw physical media for what it was, a stepping stone. The real prize, the long game, was always going to be delivering movies and shows directly over the internet. So that big pivot to pixels officially kicked off in 2007. They launched this thing called Watch Now, and it caught on fast. By 2009, believe it or not, more people were streaming on Netflix than were getting their DVDs. But this transition was anything but smooth. In 2011, they made a decision to split their streaming and DVD plans, which led to a massive price hike and, well, one of the most famous, or maybe infamous, branding disasters in tech history. Yeah, this word right here, Quickster. It looks so simple on the screen, but oh my gosh, if you are a subscriber back then, you remember this. This one word represents a moment of pure, absolute crisis for Netflix. So the plan was this. They were going to spin off their DVD by mail service into a whole separate company called Quickster. And people were furious. I mean, they hated it. It felt like a confusing, totally unnecessary price gouge. The backlash was immediate. In just one quarter, Netflix lost almost 800,000 subscribers. Their stock price tanked. They had no choice but to make a really fast and really public U-turn. Okay, so after somehow surviving that whole Quickster nightmare, Netflix was ready to make its boldest, most audacious move yet. They decided they were done with just being a distributor for other people's content. It was time to become the studio. It was time to create their own. And their first big swing was House of Cards. Now, this wasn't just some creative guess. It was a cold, hard, data-driven bet. They looked at their user data and saw a pattern. People who watch David Fincher movies also loved Kevin Spacey. So they went out and outbid huge TV networks for the show. And then they did something nobody had ever done before. They dropped all 13 episodes on the exact same day. And just like that, the binge watch was born.
And make no mistake, this was not a small experiment. This was a massive shift. By 2017, they announced they were going to spend a staggering $8 billion on content the very next year. The goal? To have original shows and movies make up half of their entire library. That's a huge commitment.
And that huge investment, it absolutely paid off. Not just with more subscribers, but with something Hollywood values even more: prestige. Just look at this chart. Their Oscar nominations just skyrocketed. They went from one single nomination in 2014 all the way to 36 in 2021. That year, they had more nominations than any other studio. It was official. Netflix had arrived. All right, so at this point, they've built this successful, critically acclaimed content machine. So what's next? Well, you don't just stop there. Netflix set its sights on something much, much bigger, not just conquering a country, but conquering the entire world. The global rollout started out kind of slow. First Canada, then they moved into the UK and Ireland, but then 2016 happened. And they didn't just step on the gas, they slammed it to the floor. In a single day, they launched in 130 new countries all at once. It was a totally unprecedented move that basically put Netflix in almost every single country on the planet. And this donut chart really paints the picture, doesn't it? It shows you exactly what that global push accomplished. While the US is still their biggest single market, look at this. The vast majority of their traffic, almost 2/3 of it, now comes from the rest of the world. They are a truly global company now. This incredible global reach created a phenomenon that people in the industry now call the Netflix effect. It's this wild ability to take a show, maybe like Breaking Bad, which was kind of struggling on cable, and turn it into a massive hit. Or, even crazier, it can take a South Korean drama like Squid Game and make it the biggest show on the entire planet, practically overnight. So let's recap. They've conquered DVDs, they've conquered scripted streaming, so where does a company that's literally built on disruption go from here? The answer, it seems, is everywhere. And the first step into that future meant finally, officially closing the book on its past. In late 2023, the very last little red envelope was shipped. The thing that started this entire revolution was retired for good. So with the past officially retired, the new focus is aimed squarely at the final frontier of traditional TV. Live entertainment. And they're going all in. We're talking massive, multi-billion-dollar deals for things like WWE Raw and the NFL. They're making a huge push into video games. They're streaming live comedy specials. And they're even building actual real-world Netflix houses for fans to visit. And this strategy, this constant, relentless evolution, well, it seems to be working. As of early 2026, the service has hit an absolutely astonishing 325 million paid members worldwide. That number is just incredible. So, when you boil it all down, the real story here isn't just that Netflix killed Blockbuster. The bigger story is that Netflix has repeatedly killed and reinvented itself. Think about it. From mail to streaming to becoming a studio, and now to live events, they're never standing still. And that leaves us with one final big question. After completely reshaping entertainment for a quarter of a century, what on earth does the next chapter hold?